In Washington Township, Michigan last night. This, to me, was the key soundbite from the over hour-long rally.
Is this better than that phony Washington White House correspondence? I could be up there tonight smiling like I love where they're hitting you shot after shot. These people, they hate your guts.
There are two ways to read that shocking statement. Either he's saying when he's up there smiling, pretending to enjoy it, they hate his guts, or what he's saying more broadly is that the American media hates Trump's voters, that they hate your guts. It's a troubling statement either way. Let's bring back the panel, talk more about it. Eliana Johnson, Josh Dawsey, Molly Ball, and Margaret Talev. Josh, you were tweeting about this statement, they hate your guts line. To me, it was kind of a preview of the midterms, that this could be a message for the president in the midterms, no matter how cynical and wrong it is.
Obviously, none of us hate the American public's guts or Donald Trump's guts. I mean, our executive editor, Marty Barron, says, we're at war, not at work. I mean, we're not at war, we're at work. And I think that's an accurate depiction of it. The president has seen time and time again that a good foe for him is the media. His base loves it, his supporters love it. You see frequently when he goes up and goes after us on stage, he gets a large applause lines. Some of the rhetoric is pretty, sharp. Last night was pretty sharp when he says enemy of the American people. That's a lot to handle. Obviously, we're not the enemy of the American people. Obviously, we don't hate his guts or their guts, but I think we're going to see more of it. I think when you have 2018, you have Republicans trying to keep the House, you have the president who's going to be doing rallies across the country. I think what you'll see at these rallies is what you saw last night. Sharp media criticism, long rants about the media, and it is reality in 2018. So, that's all there is to it.
What should we learn, Eliana, from the cheers at the rallies? When there are cheers for these media attacks, what should we learn about that?
Well, I think the Trump campaigned very successfully in 2016 by pitting elites. I don't think it was about journalists. I think it was about elites more broadly. It was the people at the dinner last night were lawmakers, athletes, journalists, but pitting them against what he perceives as the American public more broadly, people in flyover country, which is where he was. That worked tremendously well for him. And I think that people who live in that part of the country do feel that they are not understood. Their concerns aren't felt by those in Washington, D.C., which is why it's an issue that works for him. And he's going to continue to harp on that issue. And it may very well be successful in the midterms, even though it does look like there's a lot of energy on the Democratic side that wasn't there in 2016.
About these attacks, Margaret, you said at the dinner last night, I'm going to quote you, you said, "We reject efforts by anyone, especially our elected leaders, to paint journalism as un-American." Obviously talking about the president and other politicians there. You said that a few feet away from Sarah Sanders. Forget Michelle Wolf for a minute. I'm thinking that must have been uncomfortable for Sanders, having to face that reality.
I actually don't think so. We talk about this all the time in public and in discussions about coverage. We seek to have a good, working, productive relationship with every White House that we cover.
But her boss is sending out a form of poison, again, painting journalists as un-American. How do you possibly have a relationship in that environment?
President Trump was elected. He's the president of the United States, and we cover the president of the United States, and we cover every president of the United States in a fulsome way, in a fair way. We seek to get as much information as possible about the programs that they are, rolling out and how they want to govern. And it's not fun or comfortable to be used as a pawn in political play, but it doesn't change the way we do our jobs. And on this other question of voter anger, I think the president's tapped into something real, really real, and it exists everywhere in this country, in places where people feel forgotten or disconnected or misunderstood. I think some of it has to do maybe with the decline of local newspapers and local television. Some of it has to do with what we cover in Washington and whether it connects to them. And some of it just has to do with feeling frustrated and left behind and feeling angry at a lot of pillars of the establishment, including the press. We are an establishment organization to the extent that we are monolithic in any way, which we're not. But we are part of the establishment. And if you have anger towards the establishment, then you're feeling about a group that covers establishment entities, the White House, Congress, business. It just makes sense that people are frustrated. I think we need to find a way to connect with people. And one thing that the Correspondents Association has been doing this year is beginning a program of visiting around the country to try to meet with constituents, to try to meet with Americans, to try to meet with readers and news consumers and people who are affected by politics.
I love that.
We did our first session in Independence, Missouri at the Truman Library. There were hundreds of people there. We're doing one at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley next month, and we hope, my term ends in July, but under Olivier and then under John Carl after that, we hope to continue this program. There are a lot of presidential libraries in all parts of the country, and it's a really good, and people come and they want to talk about what's President Trump like, how do you do your jobs, how do you do anonymous sources, how come you use anonymous sources, why don't you cover education, why don't you cover what's happening in my community, why are you always talking about Russia? And it's very valuable and useful, not just for us, but I hope for the people that we meet with to just feel that we're not these, people you see on a piece of paper or see on a TV screen. We're real people. We also have children. We also have health problems. We also have concerns.
And at the risk of sounding too optimistic here as I close out the conversation, yes, there's a lot of frustration with journalists. There's also a lot of people depending on the information right now, Molly, and I see so much support for journalism. At the same time, I see so much anger and outrage. It's that tension. Both are true at the same time.
Well, and I was going to say the same thing. There has been a backlash to Trump's attacks on the press that I have noticed since 2016. Yeah, I still get angry letters. I've gotten angry letters my entire career as a journalist. But I also, what's new is a lot of people saying sort of "atta girl," right? A lot of people saying, please keep doing what you do. It's important. And it's not liberal or conservative. It's just everyday Americans who have become more alert to the role of the press in their lives, the necessity of the press, and that is nice to hear for a change. So I think this is how polarization works. It's a two-sided thing, right? So even as he's made some in his base very angry at the press, and I think, as Josh was saying, that's a fight we should not engage in, right? But on the other side, he has also galvanized some people to remember why they like us.
To our panel, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you all. I just want to show one more data point about what the effects are of these kind of constant anti-media messages. A few days ago, Reporters Without Borders released its annual World Press Freedom Index. Look, it's getting darker all around the world. There are authoritarian regimes that are cracking down on the press in damaging ways all around the world. In the U.S., there was a drop of 2 spots from 43 to 45. Obviously, the press is much more free in the U.S. than in most of the world. But you see the world getting darker there. That's the organization saying that press freedoms are being restricted in many countries around the world. To that data point, back here at home, you look at this new Quinnipiac poll. Really interesting finding. The pollsters asked Americans to choose. You have to choose here between the press. Are they a friend or enemy, basically? Among Republicans, you see here 51% of Republicans saying they choose, we call the news media an enemy of the people, the president's language, as opposed to a key part of democracy. Interesting data point there and a reminder of the challenge journalists face trying